Rihanna was declared a billionaire by Forbes in 2021 when they put her on the cover and valued her empire at $1.7 billion. LVMH, the company behind Louis Vuitton and Dior, told the world that Fenty Beauty had just doubled its revenue. Investors valued Savage X Fenty at $3 billion for an IPO that Goldman Sachs was preparing. Then the fashion line collapsed. $36 million gone. The IPO quietly disappeared. The CEO fled to Victoria's Secret after 14 months. And in October 2025, Reuters reported something nobody expected. LVMH hired the investment bank Evercore to sell its entire Fenty Beauty stake at roughly half the valuation Forbes had used to call Rihanna a billionaire. So what happened to the empire that was supposed to be worth $2.8 billion? We are about to break this down in 5 parts. First, how the billionaire number was built. Then, the $36 million fashion disaster nobody talks about. After that, the IPO that vanished and the CEO who ran. Then the moment LVMH decided to walk away. And finally, what all of this actually tells us about where the real money is. Let us start with the number that changed everything. In August 2021, Forbes declared Rihanna the wealthiest female musician alive, worth $1.7 billion. The math behind that number was straightforward. Forbes estimated that Fenty Beauty was worth $2.8 billion. Since Rihanna owns 50%, her stake was worth $1.4 billion. Add in her 30% of Savage X Fenty, valued at roughly $1 billion from a recent funding round, and you get to $1.7 billion. That $2.8 billion Fenty Beauty valuation was never based on an actual transaction. No outside investor ever bought a single share at that price. Forbes applied a revenue multiple to estimated sales and printed the result on a magazine cover. The only real transaction that ever tested Savage X Fenty's value was a February 2021 funding round that priced the company at $1 billion. Not $3 billion, $1 billion. So the two biggest numbers behind the billionaire headline were either estimated or came from a single private funding round. And one of the companies behind those numbers was about to lose $36 million in less than 2 years. But before we get to the failures, we need to understand how Fenty Beauty actually became a force. Because this part matters for the twist at the end. Fenty Beauty did not come out of nowhere. It was incubated by a company called Kendo Brands, a beauty brand factory owned entirely by LVMH. Kendo was founded in 2010 by the former chief executive officer of Sephora Americas, and its entire purpose is to develop new cosmetic brands and launch them exclusively through Sephora stores. That matters because Sephora is also owned by LVMH. So when Fenty Beauty hit $573 million in its first full year, with its Pro Filter foundation and 40 shades that revolutionized inclusive beauty, that was not just Rihanna's vision. It was the result of the most vertically integrated beauty launch machine in the world. LVMH built the product through Kendo, distributed it through Sephora, and marketed it through Rihanna's 100 million-plus social media following. The formula worked beautifully. In 2022, LVMH announced that Fenty Beauty had doubled its revenue compared to the prior year, expanding beyond cosmetics into Fenty Skin and Fenty Hair product lines. But here is what Kendo's track record also reveals. Outside of Fenty Beauty, almost every brand in Kendo's portfolio has either been sold off, shut down, or is barely surviving. Marc Jacobs. Beauty was returned to Coty and then discontinued. KVD Beauty was sold to an outside company in September 2025. Bite Beauty was shut down entirely. Fenty Beauty is not one success in a portfolio of winners. It is the only thing keeping the lights on at Kendo. Now, if you are watching this and thinking this is not the Rihanna story you have heard before, that is exactly the point. We break down these hidden financial realities behind celebrity empires every single week. Subscribing means you will not miss the next one. That brings us to part 2, the fashion disaster. In May 2019, LVMH announced something it had not done in 32 years. It was building a fashion house from scratch. The last time the luxury conglomerate tried, this was Christian Lacroix in 1987. Lacroix never turned a profit in 23 years and eventually filed for bankruptcy. But this time was supposed to be different. This time, the name on the door was Rihanna. The project had an internal codename that tells you a lot about how it was conceived. They called it Project Loud France, named after Rihanna's 2010 album. The entity was registered in Paris, and Rihanna personally invested roughly $30 million through a British holding company called Denim UK Holdings. LVMH matched with another $30 million. $60 million total, split almost 50-50. The brand launched with a See Now, Buy Now drop model, releasing monthly capsule collections. Cotton canvas jackets were priced at $1,100. Corset dresses were priced at $990. Calfskin shoes were priced at $670. The pricing was aimed at luxury shoppers, but Rihanna's actual customer base, the people who bought Fenty Beauty and Savage X Fenty, could not afford jackets that cost $1,000. Reviews were mixed. Sales were worse. And then COVID hit, which shut down the Paris atelier and the Italian production facilities. Rihanna stayed in Los Angeles, managing her beauty and skincare lines, while the fashion operation slowly bled out. LVMH replaced the founding managing director with a Nike veteran in autumn 2020, a move that signaled the company had already lost confidence. On February 10, 2021, LVMH issued a carefully worded statement. They said they were putting the ready-to-wear activity on hold, pending better conditions. The last product drop had shipped 3 months earlier. The Instagram account had gone silent on January 1st. The website shut down by March. 4 years later, in October 2025, UK financial filings finally revealed the damage. Denim UK Holdings, the entity through which Rihanna had invested, recorded a loss of approximately $36 million. That was effectively her entire capital contribution, wiped out. And here is the detail that makes this sting. LVMH has now launched exactly 2 fashion houses from scratch in the modern era. Lacroix in 1987 and Fenty in 2019. Both failed. That is a 0% success rate on building brands from nothing. Every successful LVMH brand, from Dior to Louis Vuitton to Celine, was acquired, not built. The Fenty experiment proved the pattern holds. Now, if you are finding this breakdown useful, we are just getting started. We have 3 more parts to cover, including the billion-dollar exit that LVMH is trying to pull off right now. Part 3. The initial public offering that never happened. While the fashion house was collapsing in Paris, Savage X Fenty was supposed to be the success story that balanced the books. The lingerie brand launched in 2018 as a joint venture with Textile Fashion Group, the same company behind Fabletics and Just Fab. Between 2019 and January 2022, Savage X Fenty raised $310 million across 4 funding rounds, with investors including Jay-Z's Marcy Venture Partners, the Abu Dhabi Growth Fund, and L. Catterton, which is itself partly owned by LVMH. In March 2022, Bloomberg dropped a bombshell. Savage X Fenty was working with Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley on an initial public offering that could value the company at $3 billion or more. For context, That would have made Rihanna's 30% stake worth nearly $1 billion on its own. The initial public offering never happened. No S-1 filing was ever submitted to the SEC. The $3 billion listing quietly evaporated. And what followed was a series of moves that told a very different story from the one Bloomberg had printed. In June 2023, Rihanna stepped down as CEO. Her replacement was Hilary Super, the former head of Anthropology Group. 14 months later, Super resigned and took a job as CEO of Victoria's Secret. She left Savage X Fenty for its direct competitor. In the corporate world, that kind of move does not happen at companies preparing for a public offering. But the problems went deeper than leadership. The core of Savage X Fenty's revenue model is a membership program called Extra VIP. Members are charged $49.95 every month, automatically. If you forget to click skip the month between the 1st and 5th of each month, your card gets billed. Any unused store credit expires after 1 year. In August 2022, the district attorneys of Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, San Diego, and Los Angeles counties, along with the Santa Monica City Attorney, filed a consumer protection lawsuit against the company. The legal entity named in the suit was Lavender Lingerie LLC, doing business as Savage X Fenty. The complaint alleged deceptive billing practices and failure to properly disclose the automatic recurring charges. The case settled for $1.2 million. $1 million in civil penalties, $50,000 in investigative costs, and $150,000 in restitution. And here is the part nobody connects. Textile, Savage X Fenty's joint venture partner had already paid $1.8 million in 2014 to settle an almost identical lawsuit over the exact same auto-billing tactics at Fabletics, JustFab, and ShoeDazzle. The consumer advocacy group Truth in Advertising had warned the FTC about Savage X Fenty repeating these practices back in February 2020, 2 full years before the lawsuit was filed. This was not a first offense. It was a documented pattern. So let's take stock of where we are. The fashion house burned through $60 million and produced nothing. The $3 billion IPO evaporated. The CEO lasted 14 months before leaving for the competition, and the company's revenue model has already been the subject of 2 separate government enforcement actions across 2 brands owned by the same parent company. And we are still not at the biggest revelation. That is coming in Part 4. If you are watching this far, you clearly care about the real numbers behind the headlines. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. We have covered Selena Gomez's rare beauty empire, Meghan Markle's Netflix deal, and Bad Bunny's hidden investment portfolio, and there is a lot more coming. We are now in Part 4, and this is where the entire narrative starts to unravel. Because the company that helped build the Fenty Beauty empire is trying to get out. On October 21st, 2025, Reuters published an exclusive citing 4 people familiar with the matter. LVMH was exploring a sale of its 50% stake in Fenty Beauty, working with the investment bank Evercore. The target valuation for the entire brand was between $1 billion and $2 billion. Industry sources suggest potential buyers could include L'Oreal, which has been aggressive in celebrity beauty acquisitions, or Estée Lauder, which has the infrastructure to scale global distribution. Stop and think about what that means. In 2021, Forbes valued this same brand at $2.8 billion. That was the number that made Rihanna a billionaire. Now, just 4 years later, LVMH's own asking price implies the brand has lost somewhere between 30 and 65% of its value. The timing tells its own story. LVMH's overall revenue had been declining, down roughly 4% year over year in the first 9 months of 2025. Industry analysts reported that Bernard Arnault was raising cash for potential acquisitions, including a rumored $10 billion bid for Giorgio Armani. Selling Fenty Beauty was not about Rihanna. It was about LVMH repositioning its portfolio. And if the sale goes through, it guts Kendo, the incubator that depends on Fenty Beauty for the overwhelming majority of its revenue. If the sale happens at the low end, $1 billion total, Rihanna's 50% stake would be worth $500 million. Not $1.4 billion. $500 million. That single adjustment would erase $900 million from her net worth and drop her well below billionaire status. Forbes seems to agree that something shifted. In their 2025 Self-Made Women list, they quietly cut Rihanna's estimated net worth by $400 million, dropping her from $1.4 billion to roughly $1 billion. Her ranking fell from number 23 to number 35. And there is a competitive dimension that makes this even more striking. Selena Gomez launched Rare Beauty in September 2020, 3 full years after Fenty Beauty. Rare Beauty is now reportedly valued at $2.7 billion, meaning it is potentially worth more than what LVMH is asking for the entire Fenty Beauty business. Gomez owns 51% and reportedly turned down a $2 billion acquisition offer in 2024. Meanwhile, other celebrity beauty brands like Skims from Kim Kardashian and Rhode from Hailey Bieber continue to raise valuations at premium multiples. Fenty Beauty's revenue appears to have plateaued around $450 million to $600 million, depending on the source, while Rare Beauty has been growing 35% to 50% annually. Rare Beauty. The student has overtaken the teacher. Student. Now, before we get to the final part of this story, we want to say something. We cover these hidden business realities behind celebrity empires every single week. The Selena Gomez Rare Beauty story, the Meghan Markle Netflix deal, the Bad Bunny investment empire. If that is the kind of content you want to see, subscribe. Subscribing is the single best way to make sure you do not miss the next one. So here is the question we have been building toward. If the fashion house failed, the IPO vanished, the CEO defected, and LVMH wants out, how is Rihanna still anywhere near billionaire status? Because the failures were the distraction. While everyone focused on the fashion flop and the IPO drama, the one asset that actually works, Fenty Beauty, kept generating hundreds of millions of dollars in annual revenue through Sephora stores in over 150 countries. Rihanna owns 50% of that cash flow. Not equity in a startup waiting for an exit. Not paper wealth tied to a fundraising round. Actual revenue from a brand that sells product every single day. The fashion house was always a risk. LVMH's own CFO admitted on an earnings call that they were figuring out the offer in real time. The IPO was always speculative. But Fenty Beauty was generating $573 million in its first full year, before any of the other ventures existed. And if LVMH sells its 50% stake, something remarkable could happen. Rihanna or a new partner could acquire it. If she ends up controlling more than 50% of a brand doing $500 million in annual revenue, the control and long-term math change entirely. The billionaire story might eventually become true, just not in the way Forbes originally calculated it. The real lesson from the Fenty empire isn't that Rihanna is or isn't a billionaire. The real lesson is that the number on a magazine cover was always an estimate, never a fact. And the difference between those two things is about $900 million.